being lenient in our customer selection, being lenient in our hiring practice, being lenient in our quality assurance standards on our deliverables. It really is a crime when you see, there's just never a happy ending, ever. I think it is a crime. You're asking for unhappy customers and probably not job security if you're working in the company.
Strong companies, lasting partnerships, powerful events. Welcome to the Experience Builders Podcast.
Chris, you sent me this topic, the crime of leniency, and it just begs the question, where did this topic get planted into your brain? How did it happen?
Well, I was binge watching Blue Bloods, and so, the crime of leniency, chapter. No, listen, I think what I loved that phrase when I think I read it in a book somewhere, but I was like, that's the case as we're building back our businesses, right? And so I started thinking about all the ways that we've really suffered, not just recently on a build back, but really building any company. And I think every entrepreneur can equate to that. When you start your business, Khalil, and you are under-resourced, you settle in ways you normally don't want to. You might settle for the type of customer that you're willing to take on. You settle on ship day where you go, it looks good enough. Let's just get it out the door. And of course, you set yourself up to fail in my business on site at the live event when you are, realize, why did we allow this to happen? I've hired people that I compromised our values and maybe our standards, and we've paid a price. The more you've been at it, I think every business owner can appreciate that. So I started thinking about being lenient in our customer selection, being, lenient in our hiring practice, being lenient in our quality assurance standards on our deliverables. It really is a crime when you see, there's just never a happy ending, ever.
Yeah.
And so I think it is a crime. And if you're a serious business person, and you could be a salesperson or a project manager, you don't have to be an owner. I think being lenient and accepting mediocrity is just, you're asking for unhappy customers and ultimately probably not job security if you're working in the company. So I just thought, you know what? It's busy. It's a busy season. Right now, it's all kinds of pressure for us to just get stuff out the door. I think a lot of people are thinking that, or just to get her done. We had 17 projects out at the plastic show. I talked with one labor company and they had 77 projects. So, you got to get to your work. So, in a market that's understaffed with labor. So you go,
yeah.
How do we make sure that we're not committing that crime? So let's talk about it.
I think this is a really important one. And I think a really overarching theme for this is being objective versus subjective. I think you're always going to be able to be more lenient if you're subjective, and you can always find an excuse. Well, we need someone, or we need the revenue right now, or, well, they're not that bad of a client, or, this could be a great opportunity for us down the road, right? And being subjective allows you to settle, and not just in business, I think in life as well. There's always a reason not to go to the gym. There's always a reason why you don't cook at home. There's always a reason, to give yourself an excuse to get out of something and to be comfortable. And when you're objective, when you set standards of what we expect from a client, of what is a win for us on a project, how can we win in a project? If you define what those metrics are, what we look for in an employee, what are the values that they have to exhibit, and the skill set that they need to have, and the mentality they need to come in with. and what are our standards of quality? What are they objectively? Then you can be objective in how you view those and how you measure those and grade them. And that allows you to not be lenient. But as soon as you start being subjective, you can become lenient. But I like what you gave me whenever we're setting up for this, the crime of leniency, because it is a crime. So who is it a crime against, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I think the direct victims, right, are could certainly be your paying customer. I think it could be your other employees that meet your standard and share your values and principles.
Yeah.
I think the enterprise value of your company, if you because you and I know, Khalil, if you don't define, the things you learn by mistakes you make, really drives a lot of your process improvements.
Yeah.
And if you don't document those and you don't say, there's now a new standard, we are no longer going to do this way. What are you doing to the value of your company if you're just allowing it to be, your motto is by the hair of our chinny chin chin, right? I don't know a lot of buyers that are lining up to do business with that brand. What was it? We may be slow, but we're sloppy, right? We may be, we may make mistakes, but we're still expensive. Right? I mean, that's what they hear. So,
we may be hard to get a hold of, but things will fall through the cracks.
Yeah, that's right.
Man.
Safety is optional, just so you know, when we do it, right? So, no, I think leniency is just, then what happens is, then you ask yourself, why are you taking the shortcuts? Ultimately, it's coming down to, we don't either have the proper resources to do this the way it should be done, or we can make more if we cut that out. And either way, I don't think that's not the brand you want to build your career around.
Yeah.
And
let's dig into, there's like, we've discussed a little bit ahead of time that there's really the three areas, and we've already mentioned them, in hiring, in your processes for quality control, but then also with your clients, and excited to kind of dive into these. Let's start with the hiring aspect. Where have you in the past maybe been lenient? I can give examples of that, but also where do you see leniency in others in terms of the hiring and cultivating the staff that they want to have?
So for me, the most obvious example and the greatest pressure we see to be lenient is during the high season like we're in now, and with labor. So for example, I mentioned we have 17 projects, which we have known for 8 months about these projects. So we've had some time to plan and build and do all that properly. And because we knew about them, we could line up our labor teams for the field operators. But imagine, I've been the company where you've got 77 install and dismantle projects. And if you're in a town and you go, we're going to need 100-man call, 120-man call. And, you're in a town where the local union partnership might have 800 members, qualified trade show labor. And the need on the floor is for 3,500 workers that are qualified. So there's a fair amount that are going to fly in, and there's in Orlando, we're just using that as an example. You're going to fly people in. If in Las Vegas, there's a process that you can bring in people, register them at the union for the day or for whatever days they're working, and legitimize them being able to be there. But in the end, if it goes all according to plan, you need 120 people. And let's say you made your labor call and only 81 show up, and you're 39 men down. And now you start to go, hey, do you know anybody who, hey, is your brother back in town visiting? Hey, what does he want to make some extra money this weekend? So it goes to bring a friend to work day. Is what we call that phase. It really gets uncomfortable when it's bring a friend's Brazilian grandmother to work. She's
Oh gosh.
stable. But what happens is, this is one of the head shaking cost models. Labor companies make money based on people. And
Yeah.
if you're losing money and you still have to get the work done if you're 39 people down. So as long as I have people, and you don't need everybody to be a tier 1 expert. Sometimes you need a person to hold the ladder for a safety component, or to hold a 12-foot upright beam while 2 other people are up high attaching other things to that. So the skill sets can be different, but when you're just out of the labor talent, there's just none available. So that's where we see a lot of compromise, Khalil, happen on the labor front. So that's one example. The other is you're underperforming and you're desperate for sales and you're hiring commission salespeople, and you just you'll hire a stone cold hunter, but nobody's caring about what they say or how they represent your company, or there's a lot of damage that can be done that way. So I think it can be really anywhere. Hey, we're going to take one of the general warehouse service technicians and we're going to put him into graphics because he's going to help out in graphics, but he doesn't know anything about graphics. So he mistakenly might cut something, or something adhesive gets laid on a place or not in a straight line, right, where it should, and that has to be reprinted. So there's cost consequences of leniency everywhere. That's just a few things off the top of my head.
Well, I think I've kind of already given an overarching of objective, subjective, but I think what allows you to really maintain standards in your business is having really healthy margins. If you have healthy margins, then you're going to be able to make better decisions and you're going to be able to uphold the standards that you want to uphold. But if you are barely making money, you'll make more leniency. You'll leave leniency inside of hiring and what clients you take on, all those kinds of things. But with the hiring aspect, sometimes, like you've already mentioned, people are going to hire a heartbeat. Do they have a pulse? Okay, great. Get them on the floor. But reality is, more than skill set, more than anything like that, you really want to know values. And do they fit the values of your team? Do they have the core behaviors that you're looking for in a rock star employee for your company? And it doesn't mean that they're going to have the best skill set, that they're going to know everything, but do they exude what you want from an employee? And really, I think the first starting point for a lot of companies and wanting to improve their culture and have higher standards is setting the standards, setting the values that they want people to live by, and then communicating those frequently. Don't just put up a poster of it. Show by example, right? People will follow your example. So lead by example with your values and the standards you want to uphold, but then ask people about them. Ask them what it looks like to live that value out. Ask them, who's someone that lives by these values in the company that we should highlight, and then honor that person, lift them up, encourage it, spotlight them, right? That's what's going to get things carried forward and people understanding those standards. And then you can, point to those so much that now people understand we need to be living and working at this level. The next thing that I'll say is, more than you highlighting values and encouraging them and bringing them up in conversation, nothing speaks louder than your actions in terms of keeping bad employees around. I know you may need their skill set to get this project done, but you're hurting the rest of the team and destroying culture, destroying morale by keeping a bad player on your team. And everybody knows it. Everybody recognizes that they're not holding up to the standard, that they're not someone that belongs on the team, really. If you keep them around, you're only hurting things long-term for your business and for your culture. So that's where you should be lenient. Let them go. When you know they need to go, let them go. Don't just keep them around because it makes sense for this project or whatever it is.
Absolutely true.
I think, it all starts with your process of hiring too. Like you should find those things in the hiring process. And if you can't find a value fit in the hiring process, then you need to update your hiring process. So, yeah, let's move on to the client aspect. Where do you see most, the leniency when people are bringing on new clients or working with existing clients?
In terms of being lenient on the clients you're pursuing or taking on, you mean?
Yeah, taking on, yeah.
Oh,
And keeping
okay.
around.
So if I'm assuming you're leading the horse to water, so I'm prepared to go and drink. It's number one thing I think is consequences of the death spiral, right? When you are desperately in the race to grow your business, whether you're an individual and it's your book of business, whether you're an owner and it's your actual company, and you are in need of resources, or you've convinced yourself your sales will be this for a year, and you've hired 3 new people and you've expanded or doubled your space or bought equipment or whatever you did, you gotta make the revenue, and you're not making your revenue. So what happens is you start to settle on the type of work, right? Because you need the cash. So I got to make payroll every Friday. And it's not happening, but this guy just walked in and he'll pay us $10,000 if we can do this, this, and this. And so what you might do is bump the work you had scheduled, which was a good thing, that was process driven, standards driven. And you're going to take on these 27 planner boxes for the wedding that, somebody walked in and has a rich dad and they're willing to pay for that. And so you run out and you don't really have, commercial grade cutting tables. So, you've got, but you're going to run out and buy 6 skill saws and have your worker guys just, do the measurements by hand and cut using the skill saws. And you're going to make all those planter boxes, and you're going to get these 2 guys to do the painting. And by the way, halfway through, you look at them and no 2 look the same. Okay. Which is an interesting, but my point is you've settled on your hires. You've settled on the decision. It started with the wrong customer decision, the wrong project acceptance. Then you weren't honest about qualified people or having the right resources. Right. And all this was to really collect the 10,000 cash, which when you add it all up, including your time and your labor and some of the redo things that at final inspection, the customer made you rebuild, it cost you $8,763 to make $10,000 worth of planter boxes. And now you're behind schedule on the 2 jobs you had, right? I mean, I know everybody listening right now can relate to that moment. So I think the pressure of the death spiral, and we talk about this a lot, is when you're in a situation where you're having to get new deposits to collect money today, to pay for bills or finished jobs from last month. So I think that's the first thing, Khalil. How do you end up picking the wrong customer? Second thing, I think, is there's the vanity play, right? This is a big brand and we want to do the work for, we got a call during the pandemic when the NBA was here in Orlando operating in the bubble. And LeBron James's people called us and said, hey, who is the spot? He had like a bunch of sponsors. And because he was, in quarantine here and they wanted to do something nice for him. And they said, we want to create a crate that's like a gift box, but it's like a 4x8 crate, but it will have all these high-end gifts, watches and clothing and other things, all that were sponsors of LeBron. And we want it to be a high gloss purple and yellow Laker laminate on the crate. And we want it to open hydraulically, and can there be like a little bit of a smoke machine that comes out? And then there's another hydraulic pedestals that come up with the gifts on top of them. And could you do like an LED thing and they needed it in 13 days. And you go and and it's not like we had a lot going on at the time, right? During pandemic.
Sure.
But all the real carpenters had been furloughed. So anyway, but we're desperate for any money. Anyway, Thankfully, I forget who, it might have been me, but one of us was smart enough to say no thank you in the end. But we spent hours and hours trying to figure that out. And we reached out and contacted some people that do stuff like that. And it was just an insane cost. And anyway, but we wanted to say we did LeBron James, gift box. So the vanity of it had us going down that road. So it could be desperate for money. It could be ego driven. We want to take this on. You tell me what am I missing on the reasons that drive you to making bad client acquisitions?
Absolutely. I think going back, we even have one of our first episodes, I believe, with Greg Beach. How can we win on this project?
How to qualify the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. Just how can we win on this project? Can we win, and can they win as well? And just being able to answer that question objectively, again, going back to the objective. And what is that objective? That objective is profitability. The objective purpose of business is making a profit, and really more so making cash, because you can make a profit and go broke if you don't collect the money.
Know who you are and know who you're not. And I think it was Greg that told us on that call, he said, I want to get all those questions answered, and I want to tap out before I even get in the ring if I find out this is not the right type of customer or project for us. And there was a time, when you're a straight commission salesperson, that is not in your vocabulary, man, because you don't get paid if you tap out. But at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to protect your own company and not drag them into, those boondoggles.
Yeah. If you're focused on profitability rather than top line revenue, and rather than the excitement of a new opportunity, you should be okay here. And that means, there's other things that go involved with this that are outside of profit, but also like, how much time do they really need us, like support wise? Sometimes you have those customers that really need you to be available nonstop, and that's really not what you're set up for.
Yes.
But you can, theoretically you could still make profit on it, but it ruins your process and ruins the other jobs that you are working on because they need you to hold their hand nonstop. Well, that's not really, we're not actually charging for that, and we should be, and really we don't want to do that. So we need to let go of that. So just understanding what it is to win and what the right fit is, going through that and setting your standard there really makes a huge difference.
We're talking about the crimes of leniency, and this is a great conversation. So Khalil, I know a very high-end account exec that would babysit the kids of their biggest customer, and also would go to church with them on Sunday when asked. Would you do that for, let's say, a $4 million a year customer?
Is the $4 million going straight into my pocket, or is it just a sale that I'm making?
It's $4 million in sales. It's $4 million of revenue at whatever your typical margin would be. And so what you're saying is, so the money would matter. That's what.
Well, it depends. If this is going to be my only customer and they're going to pay me $4 million, I net $4 million, I might consider just being a nanny.
Converting to Buddhism? Is that? No, so I'll join your religion. No, listen. And by the way, there's nothing wrong. I think we all do things for our best customers that seem off the unique and different, but to your point, I think when it changes who you are, when you're taking those calls, and by the way, if you're in the trade show and business event space, you're taking calls on weekends and nights. That's what we do, right? We live the carnival life. Events move in and out at nights and on weekends. It's really a disruption for a family life in a lot of ways, and if you're not honest with your family about what it is. But crime of leniency is making exceptions and not living up to who you are and the standards that are the right standards. I absolutely believe when you brought up Greg Beach, the whole idea of qualifying customers and opportunities, there's a crime of leniency in that lane that could just absolutely just get you into trouble if you pretend you're something you're not, or take on something you know you're really not capable of, or you do it for your own personal desperate needs and not because you're in service to others and in the right way. So, yeah.
There's one other area we haven't covered yet in terms of leniency, and that's with quality control, production, whatever you want to call it. Where do you see people go, tend to be lenient in terms of their production?
So we have a woodworking and mill area that's a very active area. And I'm thinking about my friends at Classic Exhibits right now, who this is what they do. It's so much what they do. I mean, those guys are just incredible. Not just the woodworking, but the metal bending and what they do with aluminum. And you know what I've heard people say is like, oh yeah, but Classic costs more. Well, do you really, it's what we talked about earlier. Do you really understand the value of what they're doing? Do you know what the investment would be for you to make? You were going to do those things. So I think for us, they're like, in woodworking, they're like Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and we're like a MASH unit. BJ and Martin's Hawkeye. But I think people go back and they, we'll see people sell things and not give the value. They don't understand what it would take. Case in point, I'm across my office. I'm looking at a 1 meter white laminated counter with a LED edge around it. If I'm going to make just one of those, it's $1,183 to make it as it stands over there in the corner. If I'm going to make 10, I can bring that cost down 10 at a time. But when somebody comes back and goes, yeah, I want to rent that for, I was thinking like $150. And it needs to be in a color maybe I don't have, so I have to change a color, or maybe the shape's a little bit different. And, so I see people that don't value the 27 man hours it's going to take to make something. So I think that's in our process. There's a reason we have estimators, and there's a reason our pricing is what it is. And if 150 is your budget, I can show you some things we've made in the past and used that are on the shelf that may not be 150, but it'll be a lot closer to that. Anyway, I think I think one is what it takes to fabricate something like that. Number two, why are you guys charging me all this labor to prep my rental? Well, if you don't realize, we do a full dress rehearsal before your show, everything that's going out. So it happens not once, but twice. And it gets repacked, dismantled twice, and repacked and custom labeled and prepped. And we're not charging what the rates on the show floor are for doing that. It's a warehouse rate. It's not a union journeyman rate. But to your point, but all that costs money. And I remember being guys where we didn't charge for that. And you go, oh, if you pay, $150 for a frame rental, it's going to include us taking 4 days to set it up and label it and take it down, and it's just included in your 150. Well, that you can't stay in business very long with that. So again, process. We're talking about where in the process. So I think true fabrication. I think pulling and prepping and respecting the time it takes to do all that. The most expensive place, Khalil, to make changes, fixes, or to build or to meet for the first time is on the trade show floor. So when things all meet there for the first time, that is the worst place. So anything we do in preparation there is to limit the costs that are going to be spent at show site during the client event. It's also stressful for the client to watch the sausage gets made at their show site, right? No, they don't want to see that. So anyway, when I think about process, I think it's a lot happens on the planning and the before and the prep. And you have to have a defined process in order to manage costs and deliver the win, right? At show site.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with this one, probably more than others, you can see in real time your reputation score go down. And that matters so much in a business where word of mouth and repeat customers are everything. And so you don't want to be lenient in something that can have such a big stake riding on it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, the crime of leniency, holding standards. I think it all starts with setting the standards, communicating them clearly to everyone involved, your team, your clients, your salespeople, even yourself, just knowing them and having a lot of clarity on where you stand is great. And then from there, being objective and not subjective will go a long way. So fun topic, Chris. Thanks for suggesting this.
Well,
Maybe there's other
I'm trying
areas.
I'm trying to figure out my blue bloods clothes because I opened with that reference, right? But last week after binge watching, catching up on some of those on the final season, I was like, how would Danny Reagan close in on the crime of leniency right now? I'd be like, listen, Khalil, you're suspect. Okay. So I think we've illustrated enough examples, seriously, to everybody that doesn't recognize it. I think you've heard enough to realize this is what I'll end with. A great expression from my wonderful, wise friend and mentor, Charles Palaka, who I don't know if he's still the vice chairman of Impact XM, but he was one of the founding partners of that entity. And he used to say to me, at the counter of success, there is no credit. You pay in cash and you pay in advance. So I think as you develop your processes, and he's also a man that talked about staying true to your values and your principles. And if you're building your company, your organization, your processes from there outward, it's much easier to do it once, even though it might take a little longer than to have to keep doing it wrong or the shortcut and realizing it still doesn't work for all situations, which ultimately will cost you money in the long run. So the counter of success, there is no credit. You pay in cash, you pay in advance, Khalil. Here endeth the lesson, my friend.
Well, thanks again, Chris.
All right.
Hope it's a conversation our audience enjoys. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you see us. Appreciate you guys.
See you on the next one, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Experience Builders Podcast. Check out our website in the show notes or visit crewxp.com to learn more.